Okay, folks, hi. I'm here to talk about the test number 2. So I'm going to go over the answers for test number 2. So let's take a look. Says question 1, an economy saves 20% of any increase in GDP. Well, what I actually give you here is the MPS. You save 20% of an additional increase in GDP or in income. So I give you the MPS. And if you know the MPS, then you know the multiplier. So the multiplier is equal to 1 divided by MPS, or another way would be 1 divided by 1 minus MPC, which is the same as MPS. So it's equal to 1 divided by 0.2, that's equal to 5. So the initial increase in GDP, which let's see how much it is, it's $2 billion, is going to get multiplied by this multiplier 5, and 2 billion times 5 is equal to $10 billion. So that's why the answer is D. Okay. Number 2, if MPC decreases, well, what happens to the multiplier? Well, it's very simple. All you have to do is calculate the multiplier with 2 different MPCs. Let's say MPC is equal to 0.9, then the multiplier, spending multiplier, is equal to 1 divided by 1 minus 0.9 is equal to 10. And if the MPC is equal to 0.8, then the spending multiplier is going to be equal to 1 divided by 1 minus 0.8 equals 1 divided by 0.2 equals 5. As you can see, if the MPC goes down, the multiplier goes down. So that's the answer is A. Number 3, when the GDP is less than full employment, then what do we have? We have a recessionary gap if the GDP is less than full employment GDP. So if we have a situation like this, the actual GDP is less than full employment GDP. Here is the actual GDP, and this is called a recessionary gap. Okay. For number 4, I gave you the MPC. The MPC is 0.75. That means that the multiplier is 1 divided by 1 minus 0.75. The multiplier is going to be equal to 4. Just have to plug in here 0.75 for the MPC. So if you know the multiplier is equal to 4, any increase in investment, in government spending, in this case is investment, of $100,000 is going to go through the multiplier and is now going to become an increase in GDP of $400,000. 5, Keynesian macroeconomists would likely argue that classical model is taking the long run view. So is the long run theory. Okay, Keynesian is the short run, classical is the long run. Remember, classical, they say in the long run, everything is going to be fine. The larger, number 6, the larger the MPC. Well, here we had the smaller the MPC, what happens to the multiplier? Now we have the opposite, the larger the MPC. Obviously, the larger the MPC, the larger the multiplier. An inflationary gap is the amount by which the economy is operating now beyond full employment GDP. So the amount by which actual GDP is above full employment GDP. 8, long run aggregate supply reflects, well, long run aggregate supply reflects total production at full employment. Okay, it's this guy here. It's full employment GDP. It reflects total production at full employment. Fiscal policy involves which of the following? Fiscal policy is changes in government spending and changes in taxes. So therefore, in that case is tax policy. The original Keynesian economic theory states that we know that with Keynesian economic theory, wages are sticky downwards. They tend not to adjust downwards. So therefore, number A, many prices, including wages, would not decline even if aggregate demand decreases. 11, to close a recessionary gap through fiscal policy. Well, the government would either have to increase spending or decrease taxes. So let's see. Increase aggregate spending, increase government spending in order to increase aggregate demand. Very good. Okay, this one is repeating. This is repeating. We had it before. So it's one of, I told you I made a mistake. I was getting questions from different tests. So I lost track of the fact that some of the questions were exactly the same. So this one is a recessionary gap where the economy is operating below full employment GDP. An increase in government spending would cause aggregate demand to shift to the right. Again, this is where I give you the Mpc, you calculate the multiplier, and that $100,000 is going to be times the multiplier. Keynesian macroeconomists would likely argue that classical model is the long run theory. Again, an inflationary gap, the amount by which you are operating beyond full employment GDP. Long run aggregate supply reflects total production in the economy at full employment. Fiscal policy involves which of the following? Tax policy. The original Keynesian economic theory states that, let's see, wages are sticky. One characteristic of built-in or automatic stabilizers is that they do not require the approval of Congress. They take place automatically. Congress doesn't have to do anything. Fiscal policy may end up destabilizing to an economy because, well, the cause of that is because it takes a long time. There are those various time lags that take place, the recognition, the action, and the effect time lag. And it could be that the economy recovers by itself, and then the stimulus hits in as the economy is booming, and it may lead to an inflation. That's why it could be destabilizing. Which of the following would cause aggregate demand to decrease? Well, let's see. The government increases taxes on businesses and personal income. When they increase taxes on us, on businesses, well, what are we going to do with the spending? Spending is going to go down, so that's going to decrease the demand for goods and services. 23, an increase in total real expenditures that is caused by a factor other than the price level, okay? So anything other than the price level is going to shift aggregate demand. Here is an increase in spending. So that means that the shift in aggregate demand is going to take place to the right, an increase. So aggregate demand shifts to the right. 24, an example of an automatic stabilizer is unemployment compensation. When the economy goes into a recession and people lose their jobs, that's when they get this unemployment compensation. When did they pay it? They paid it when they were working. So took away money when times are good and gives back money when times are tough, because that's where you collect unemployment compensation. The classical model uses the assumption that all wages and prices are fully flexible. So in the classical model, wages and prices are flexible. In the Keynesian model, they are sticky. They tend not to go down. Okay, folks, so I would like you to review this session. And then on Monday or Tuesday, whenever you have classes, show up for office hours and let's talk. Let's talk. I would love to see you in office hours. Okay, it's kind of lonely over there. All right. You have a good one. I'm gonna shut it off.